What's up? Hey, hello everyone. Wow, so today we are back going to be talking about Survivor Season 46, Episode 8, finally a regular vote. So I'm excited, and my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and this is episode after episode several. And once again, we got a several shout out this episode. So,
Is there just no, I think instead, it's base 10. We should just do base several. So this is several plus one.
yeah, base several would be a fun way of doing things. So, just a thought for the future. We should all switch to a base several system. But
True.
I don't know. I feel like this episode was kind of. I liked that everyone voted, but also, can we just be done with the whole rice negotiation thing?
Yo, this episode was a hot mess too at Tribal Council. Like everyone just saying like this is the dumbest thing ever. I'm sure having to experience that tribal, yeah, I would be so fed up.
I would also be so fed up. I feel like live tribals are something that I feel like people really like to talk about, but I feel like experiencing one would not be fun.
Yeah, unless you won the necklace like Hunter or basically only if you won the necklace or you had some kind of immunity that wasn't an idol, like you're for sure safe, so maybe it's less stressful, but yeah. I would be a lot. I'd be too much.
It would definitely be too much for me. So,
So we start off the episode with Ben. He's being sad that his buddy Tim was voted out last week. He apparently had a named alliance with Tim that we didn't know about. So I was sort of like, huh, that's interesting because I guess you could assume on Green, Ben and Tim were like maybe the two left out because you had the Charlie's Angels alliance, but then we saw that that didn't work out when Jem got voted out. So it seems weird that we never even got a snippet of Ben and Tim are actually close, and maybe that's why like Charlie and Maria worked with them instead of the Charlie's Angels group. It's just like, dang, we didn't even know about this named alliance.
we didn't know about it until it was over. But I feel like Ben did like the best thing in this situation, which was to be like, I'm bummed. Like, he was my friend, but also I understand why you guys did it. Just because I feel like one of the things that people sometimes do is if you act like, oh, this person didn't matter at all to me, people are going to think that you're lying. But then also, if you hold a grudge, holding a grudge isn't the best thing to be doing. So I feel like Ben
True.
navigated the situation really well.
You gotta like let it go in front of other people, whether that's a real thing or a lie, but in front of other people, you gotta at least fake it and pretend like you're okay with your buddy dude getting voted out. Then maybe in confessional, you're like, yeah, I want to avenge them or get revenge on these people that voted for them. But seems like Ben isn't necessarily angered like that in order to want to seek revenge like we've seen past players do, but it was sort of sad for Ben.
It was sort of sad for Ben. I hope that he's doing okay. I also just feel like it's one of those things where it's probably not good for Ben's like long-term longevity if like one of his allies went home. But then also we didn't even know that this was one of his allies. So, yeah.
We also see Q disliking Ben because Ben and the ladies are yapping back at camp after tribal council, and he's like, no. It does make sense from his point of view. It's like, okay, we just voted someone out of the six. Us should reconvene and talk about things before the second tribal group comes back. Like maybe we have things to flesh out and discuss. Like it makes sense he would want to get information here. Like there's going to be barely any time before the other team comes back. It's just funny this entire episode. Like small things will like make Q dislike you and want to vote you out. Just like Mariah saying her favorite player was Aubrey.
Yeah, I feel like Q is he is such an interesting player because I feel like he has the potential to be like annoying. Like I feel like he would be someone who would be difficult to play with, but also like he's fun TV because he's not like Banu where he's just yelling and screaming. He's like just doing his own thing. And you're like, okay, cute. Like, you do you, I guess.
He's really doing himself this whole episode. It's definitely a very Q-centric episode. We also see Venus trying to take credit for the soda vote, which was also very funny this episode. I thought Tevin did a good job of keeping quiet. I feel like if you thought that you made the move and someone else was trying to claim credit for the move, it would be so hard to keep your mouth shut in that kind of situation. But I feel like it's good for Tevin not trying to be like, actually, Venus, you didn't do it, I did, da da da, like try to take credit, but like just sitting there and saying, yeah, Venus, good job.
Yeah, I feel like that would be hard. It's interesting because Venus posted on Twitter about how she wasn't going to be watching this episode before it aired. And I feel like a lot of people were expecting that to mean that Venus got voted out. But I wonder if it's almost like Venus doesn't want to watch herself get played, because it feels like Venus definitely was kind of cocky, taking credit for everything. And then Tevin, and to a smaller degree, Liz, were both like, you didn't do that, honey. So,
Yeah, like sort of laughing about it behind her back, which in a game, I guess it makes sense. It's like, haha, we're fooling this person. She thinks she's fooling us, but we're actually getting one up on her. I do think for Venus, though, like if it was actually her move kind of thing, her trying to mend fences with Tevin the next day, like that's a good thing. That is good on her part to go up to Tevin and be like, sorry, here's my explanation. The problem is that Tevin also thinks that it's his vote, so then he's sort of like, WTF, Venus, like we're sort of making fun of you behind your back because you think you're playing us, but we're playing you. But if it really were truly Venus's vote and people didn't think that, like if she had more respect in the game, basically, like her going up to Tevin and trying to mend fences is a good game move.
yeah, I feel like it would be a good game move if she actually had an accurate read on the game. So I think that's the main thing, where Venus doesn't have an accurate perception of herself or of anyone else. And so things that would have been good game moves if they were like real game moves, like don't have as much weight. Like even the voting out soda, like if Venus had been responsible for that, that would have been a great game move for her. But it wasn't her move, so it's kind of like, do we really give credit here?
Exactly. And it's sort of like that Spider-Man meme where the three Spider-Mans are like all pointing at each other. You know that one, Alyssa?
Yep.
Because then it's like, okay, Venus and Tevin both think they have the credit for this. And then we hear from Liz, who we haven't really heard from ever since she kept talking about money at the start of the season. Liz comes in, is like, actually, I orchestrated this move, and I am mad at Venus and Tevin for both taking credit. I liked her line of saying, for someone like me who has a giant ego, it's so hard to give them the play. It's just so funny because like we haven't really heard much from Liz besides the money stuff. And then now she's like coming balls to the wall and like, let's vote Tevin out because he's trying to take credit. We got to get rid of all these people.
I feel like in some ways Liz coming in and also wanting credit like made me laugh even more than Venus wanting credit, because we can see the scenario in which Venus would believe this was her move. But like on no planet am I like, ah yes, Liz, the mastermind. So I do think it's really funny how she like talks about how she has a big ego and how she's kind of like egotistical, just because I feel like a lot of people with big egos aren't willing to admit that they have big egos. So her being like, yeah, I'm egotistical, so it's hard for me to like let other people take my credit. I was just laughing at that.
And I think it makes sense given like her business ventures. Like obviously she seems very successful in real life. You're probably going to think very highly of yourself. So I just thought her trying to take the credit was coming so much out of left field that I agree it was sort of funny.
Yeah, it was really funny, I think.
But I guess we can say Liz does get the credit for the Tevin vote out this episode because she was basically the nexus from this like roundabout reasoning of, oh, Tevin's getting the credit for the soda vote. Therefore, we need to vote someone out who like I've been working with, who was an OG member on my original mommy tribe. Nah, who cares about that? Let's go vote him out. I feel like Liz this episode is good at buddying up with the powerful players. Like we saw her buddying up with Tevin. Tevin was very powerful. Here in this episode, we see her like buddying up with Q and like leaning on his shoulder and stuff like that. And maybe she needs to change that after the tribal council, but I feel like she seems good at picking the people that are like in that leader position, and then she can become like the right hand person of.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the right hand person, I feel like, has a harder time when you get to final tribal because you're like, oh, like I did this move, and people are like, no, that was so and so's move. So I think it will be interesting if Liz does get to final tribal, like her ability to be like, hey, I did this. So
Yeah, I feel like Liz, it'll be interesting since we haven't seen too much of her. Feel like maybe she could fall in the Venus vote of maybe not getting as much respect, but Liz is probably a good talker considering her business ventures. So if she can spin it like, yeah, I was the right hand gal for Tevin, and then I backstabbed him and I was the one that got him out. I became very close with Q, and then I was the one to vote him out and maybe make a story like that way. But I don't know. From what we've seen, I feel like Liz isn't really considered someone making the moves this season. So it's good for her this episode that she's realizing that and trying to change that. So I think that's respectable.
yeah, I think that's respectable too. So hopefully we'll see more of Liz. It could also just be that classic, like we see more of someone in like the episode right before they go home. So I'm hoping that's not it for Liz because I feel like she's a fun character, even if, again, I'm not sure how much I would enjoy being stuck on an island with her, but yeah.
Speaking of, we get Q yapping a lot this episode. We get this whole Q skirt advertisement where Q is telling everyone about his new invention. Similar to like pre merge, Hunter is just sitting there and staring while Q is like giving his business pitch. It was funny.
I think the funny part about this to me is that, like, they can give us like a whole 5 minute thing about a Q skirt, but they can't let us know that like Tim and Ben are in an alliance together. Like I feel like it's one of those things where people learn, or not people, I should say, the editors definitely. There are some things where they edit it down, and I'm like, I would have liked to see this instead of this. Actually, I feel like the like whole Q skirt thing definitely does set up Q's, I guess, kind of paranoia, you could say. But also, I think it sets Q up as being kind of a social threat because Tevin said something to the effect of, like, I don't even give a damn, but because he's so excited, like, I'll buy one, I guess. So I feel like that could also be talking about Q as a social threat because he's a little bit wild and wacky, but also he's weirdly charming. So
What does Q say? Bad move?
I don't know.
So I would say like okay, the Q skirt when like hide and seek is happening and Q is like if I found you, you did bad. But if I didn't find you, that's even worse and I'm going to vote you out. People should be like, "Ah, Q's a good talker. He can sell this fake weird skirt." Bad move. We should vote him out for this.
The thing is, I feel like it's one of those things where like Q is legitimately thinking that way. It's not just an act. And so, like, someone acting like wild and wacky is different from someone who actually is wild and wacky. It's like the people who try to be quirky versus people who are actually quirky. Like, the energy, the vibes are different. So I feel like one of the things about Q is that he is being very genuine in the way that he plays. So even if the way he plays probably isn't very like logical, it's still genuine, and I feel like that can help get people on his side.
Yeah, like you really don't want to get on Q's bad side. As we see throughout the episode, the littlest thing can be like, you're dead to me, there's no more alliance, or I'm targeting you now, I gotta keep you on my radar. this hide and seek game was really interesting because half the people are like, ah, fun game of hide and seek. This was a lot of fun, de-stress. We're bored out here. The other group is like, this is a strategy game of hide and seek. Then we see confessionals between Q and Venus reading super into like the hiding spots and what they mean, which I thought was funny. And it reminded me of English class because in English in like high school, you're analyzing these books and then it's like, okay, what does the blue chair mean from the author's point of view? And then the teacher is like, ah, the blue means like depression and the person is really sad and that's why they bought their house like that. And then you're just like, I think it was just the blue chair.
Yep. It was just a blue chair sometimes.
So some people were reading super far into it. Some people were like, fun game. I thought this scene was extra funny because Q has more list of people he doesn't like. Liz because Liz found Q, and Hunter and Ben because he wasn't able to find Ben. And I liked his line here. He says, Liz wants to win no matter how much she says it's just $1 million. So the money thing comes back for Liz.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting to hear other people's like interpretations. Like I think Venus says about Tiff, like, oh, Tiff is sloppy because she wore a red buff into the jungle. So obviously people could see her. And I'm kind of like, what other color buff do you want her to wear? So I do think it's interesting, like you said, people just read in so far to the smallest things.
Or like Tiffany, I guess, could hide the buff, put it like around your ankle or take it off for the game. Or it's like maybe from Tiffany's point of view, she left it on so people would think she's sloppy. 3D chess.
3D chess.
And Hunter is just in the tree above the shelter. It was so funny also. There's a Reddit thread going around that it like a meme kind of thread saying Q is from the future. And then one of the things was like, yeah, how would Q just randomly be looking straight up and finding Hunter in the shelter? He must have known Hunter was already there from the future.
Yeah, yep. I do think it's funny that no one looked up though. Like you're in a forest, look in the trees.
So we also see Q bring Charlie into the Six Alliance is so dead though. Like by the end of this episode, I do not think this six is going into next episode. And even like we were saying, oh, the foursome of Tiffany, Q, Hunter, and Tevin could be a strong foursome within the six. Even that is probably dead by the end of the episode, which is funny. Like, this is a terrible alliance. They just keep eliminating themselves and then they are infighting. Maria in this episode is still very gung ho on the six. Probably by the end of this, she's going to be outsies and not want to be in it anymore. Charlie being brought in, he does have a good read on it, I think. He says, okay, this six is good for now, but I don't want to accidentally get stuck at the end with people I can't beat. And then Q says Charlie would probably be the one to flip on the six, which is extra funny considering what happened later.
I was gonna say, I feel like Q is so funny because he's like, oh, anyone who flips on the six is like dead to me. But then he also is like, oh yeah, let's vote out Tiff. And I'm like, bestie beloved, like, what are you doing?
But his reasoning is if someone goes against the six first, then he can go against someone in the six. So Tiffany starts being targeted because she said Maria's name. That is bad news bears for Q. Q says, F that. We need to go against Tiffany because she wants Maria out. Maria's in the six, just like Tim said Hunter, and Hunter is in the six. But then it's also crazy, like, Tevin is also in the six and they just vote for him randomly.
Yeah, basically, this whole six thing, I feel like it's just so people can feel secure. Like, oh, I have an alliance, but like, it doesn't mean shit.
Yeah, Tevin didn't go against the six.
So, this six, like you said, DOA.
But, like, I do think Tiffany is right, though. Like, it's smart to keep Venus around. Like, currently, she is not a threat. She's not really respected by people. Like, she is correct. That is someone you'd want to bring to Final Three. Q, I guess, is also correct in saying, like, we should vote out, the GOAT players because they're taking spots from other people. So, like, technically, both have fine reads on the situation. Tiffany tells Tevin that, okay, we should keep Venus around, but she doesn't say another name. Tevin then goes and spills the beans to the six because Tiffany didn't name a name, and you could have named anyone else that wasn't in the six here to vote out. And then Q is just so anti Tiff, like a flip of the switch. All those prior days together fighting on Yanu meant nothing.
Apparently not. I wonder if, like, people keep saying that this is like Q playing like 5D chess and he's going to get to the end just because, like, this man has tried quitting like 5 times and no one has ever let him quit. And so it's kind of like he's going to get to the end just by being this capricious, and people are going to be so impressed by him getting to the end despite all of his like bull that they're going to vote for him. So I guess that's also 5D chess.
Yeah, like Final Tribal, he'll be like, Jelinski wasn't actually the quitter and the Sweat vs. Savvy and all the other stuff. I actually, finagled his brain to make him want to quit. But I also feel like Q doesn't really think he's quitting. From his point of view, it seems like he is like the martyr. I made a mistake. I'm falling on my sword. So, like, vote me out. It's not a quit. So then I can see going back to episode 1, if he said similar stuff to Jelinski, then Jelinski maybe is like, okay, let's also quit. And then Q is like, bad move. I didn't really want to quit. I was testing you to see if you wanted to quit.
Yeah. Oh, Q. Oh, Q.
But I think it's wild that he's so anti Tiffany because Tiffany is telling him all this good information. She's like spilling all the beans on everything else she's hearing. Like, that could be a good duo. And that is a lot of good information sharing. And it's also interesting that, like, Maria and everyone else truly believe that Q is willing to vote Tiffany out. Maybe other stuff happened out there that we weren't privy to as viewers, but I think if I were there, I'd be like, yo, is Q faking it, wanting to vote out Tiffany? And then maybe they're going to like double back and she plays her idol if she's getting all the votes and they vote someone else out. Like, how can you be so sure he's willing to vote out his number one ally in a flip of a switch? Doesn't that make him someone you don't want to work with if he can flip on Tiffany that fast?
Yeah, I do not understand how these people are thinking. It could just be that there's something that we don't know that is making this all make sense. So,
Yeah, Q in confessional basically says you have to play my game. If you're not playing my game, you're getting voted out. I do think it would be interesting. Like, Q has a ton of siblings. Like, I would want to hear some about that because maybe it's like his personality growing up with a lot of other kids in the house. Like, you have to fight for like your space, your belongings, food, stuff like that. So that's why Q is so like, I need to be controlling this game because of growing up.
yeah, who knows? I feel like we haven't really heard a lot about Q's relationship with his family, even though I feel like that would give a lot of insight into like what is going on with him. So,
That's the most interesting thing. He's got so many siblings that preseason we were like, we need this story.
and we still haven't gotten this story.
Nope. So bad move for Q also. He tells Maria that Tiffany has an idol, which is later going to blow up in his face. But yeah, he tells Maria that Tiffany has an idol. And maybe that's why Maria and them are so adamant that Q is telling the truth that he would vote Tiffany out. Because why, if they were trying to like secret undercover backstab them, you wouldn't share that Tiffany has the idol.
Mm-hmm. I wish I was in that man's head.
So we get to the immunity challenge, and alas, we almost can't have a regular vote or challenge because of the rice negotiations. 4 people have to sit out in order to get rice, or people can sit out, lose their vote at tribal council, which is even worse. I agree with Maria. Like, we're never going to have a regular vote if all of this random stuff keeps happening. But I'm glad because I feel like every season we're like, okay, I would never sit out of a challenge, da da da. Why are these people sitting out? But then on the other hand, it's like if you've got a 0% chance to win the game, this challenge, if you've got you don't think you can do this challenge, you might as well sit out for food or for the rice, something like that. But finally, we say this from the couch, we would never sit out. We finally get a group that is doing that, and none of them want to sit out. Or not enough people want to sit out to get the rice, so no one's sitting out.
Which I think is really funny because then 5 people drop within the first like 2 minutes, I think Jeff says. And so it's like, you did not even last 2 minutes. You could have had rice. So I always think that's interesting to see the way people like gauge their own like challenge chances. Cause like Q said after this challenge, like Hunter literally just like climbed a tree for shits and giggles. Why do you think you're gonna beat him in a challenge that's basically, it's not the same as climbing a tree, but like, it's very similar, let's say. So I feel like Q was right in the sense that maybe you should think about the specific challenge that you're getting into and whether or not you're actually built for it. Because a lot of people were like, oh, it looks so fun. It's such an iconic challenge. And not necessarily like, oh, I think I can do well in this challenge.
True. On the other hand, though, like if you're voted out, having rice back at camp isn't really useful for you. Like Tevin having rice now, he's gonna go feast at Ponderosa. He doesn't need that rice bag. But I think it is interesting. It's like, okay, like Jeff said, this group is a group that are all willing to play in some form or other. Everyone has some kind of ego and mind so that they're like, heck no, I'm not sitting out. I want to play this game, even if I've got a 0% chance of winning this challenge.
Yeah. I will say though, Tevin isn't one of the first people to have dropped. So if the first 4 people who dropped all like sat out instead for rice, they would have been fine because Tevin was still the one who went home. So just saying. Just saying. I do like that better than there have been years where people have negotiated, like, if I sit out, will you promise not to vote for me? Because I feel like that's just like, that's basically making another like final 13 where only like half the people can vote and half the people are safe. So,
Exactly. Like we see Q and Liz, they volunteer to sit out. From their point of view, like I too would be sort of peeved if you volunteered to sit out and they were the first 2 people out of the challenge, and then the other people who dropped super early didn't volunteer to sit out. Like I'd be a little peeved at those people. I think it's warranted from Q and Liz's point of view. But also, I guess you can say you don't really know if you would be good at this kind of challenge. Like, sure, you can be like, okay, body size, foot size, grip strength, that can go into it compared to like a crapshoot challenge that just takes like a little bit of practice and skill. This one, maybe you can sort of see if you'd be good at because you'd need endurance and finger and toe strength and mental strength. People could sort of maybe assess better if they'd be good at it or not to sit out.
yeah, people I feel like should have done better, but it's okay.
The slow-mo lion sound montage between Hunter and Charlie was wild.
I could not figure out what they were trying to do there. Like,
It was so weird.
were they trying to show us that like Hunter and Charlie were like trash talking each other? Like that was weird. I felt uncomfortable.
It was like that scene in Mean Girls where they're like, "Oh, like this school is like the zoo," and then it like cuts to all the like students pretending like they're animals.
Yeah, I don't
So I think it would have been funny though if Jeff said yes to Charlie's negotiations when Charlie was like 1 foot off the ground.
Yeah, it would have been funny. I feel like Charlie was only intending it to be funny, but I do wonder like if there is a way where Jeff would have done rice negotiations once people were already on the polls, or if like once the negotiation is over, it's over.
Yeah. Maybe he realized that no one was going to step forward in this group, and then he just was like, okay, it's donezo's. We gotta keep moving on, y'all.
Yeah, he wanted to keep it snappy.
Yeah, and like we were saying about assessing your own challenge ability for this, looking at the polls, I, as a viewer, was like, Hunter's going to win this. In the other pole challenge, when his ring got stuck up there, he said, can I climb that pole? Like, you don't think he's going to be good at climbing this pole? He climbed the trees, like they said. And I don't know, doesn't he rock climb? I feel like maybe he's into that. I'm like, Hunter's obviously winning this.
Yeah, Hunter was obviously winning. Just yeah, and then his like trick that he did once he won, where he like had his like legs around the pole and then just like bent backwards. Like, what the heck? What the heck?
I was like, okay, quad strength. I was like, that is really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So Hunter wins immunity, good for him, although people probably are like, we need to vote Hunter out the first time he doesn't win immunity because he is pretty good at these things, which might not be good for him, but he still has the idol.
Yeah, I feel like the thing about Hunter is that a bunch of people were like, oh, he's going to be a big immunity threat, and he's kind of proving them right. And I guess, in my opinion, if you're Hunter, are you really worried at this vote? Like, is immunity something you really need to pursue? Or can you, like, let Charlie win and then, be like, oh, darn, like, I'm not as good at this as, like, managing threat level?
Yeah, and maybe this is like, oh, one of those classic challenges, and he just wants to win it, and then maybe he'll dial it back soon. Or if he's really confident in his challenge prowess from all of the games he's created for the students, maybe he'll just win out. Q said, we've never had anyone win 10 times. Q said, I can beat Hunter. Maybe Hunter will win out.
That would be fun.
So Hunter's immune. We see Liz pushing the Tevin plan onto Maria, Charlie, Ben. Maria's face here is like, oh no, this is against the six. Ben tells Kenzie about the Tevin plan. Liz tells Venus about the Tevin plan. Tiffany then tells Q about the Tevin plan. And then Q is all mad because the Tevin plan isn't his vote. He's not the driver. This is not his move. Like we've seen, Q says, you got to be playing my game or else. So he's sort of peeved by this. Q tells Hunter, and then basically this is why Q wants to quit the game, because he thinks this is the big mistake. And then Hunter goes over to the big group and tries to save Tevin.
Yeah, I feel like Q's thing with like, oh, everyone should be playing Q's game kind of reminds me of what we were saying last podcast about Venus and how Venus isn't willing to go with her second choice. Like she
Mm-hmm.
always has to have her first choice. And I feel like Q is kind of the same. But also, I don't know what's going on in Q's head. So I feel like Venus, you can tell very clearly what she wants and why she wants it. Q is just such like a loose cannon. He keeps wanting to cancel Christmas.
Yeah, it's so funny, like the memes of him on Reddit now. It's pretty funny. Like Hunter going over to the larger group, everyone else not in that conversation is watching. I do think, like, good for Venus. Like we said last time, she's very confident, and that is a good quality to have. She's just like, they can't just not let us go and then walks over there. Like, yeah, you can do whatever you want. Like, good for you.
You can do whatever you want. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should.
For Hunter, I do wonder, like him pushing to save Tevin, like, is it too early? Would you play your idol for Tevin here? I do think it is a little bit too early, and Hunter maybe realizes that the tides aren't going his way, so then he stops pushing, because I feel like it would be a bad game move. Okay, there's so many people left. Why is this guy so hardcore about keeping Tevin around and voting Tiffany out? Like, what is going on. They're way closer maybe than we thought. So I guess it is good that Hunter didn't seem to push too hard, but once he maybe realized that things weren't going his way, he's letting Tevin get voted out, but he's still voting with Tevin and he's not playing his idol for Tevin.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to go with the flow. And I feel like if you're Hunter, like he might be in a precarious position. I can't really tell like what people think about him beyond being kind of annoyed that he's like so much of a challenge beast. So
That's true, and I feel like losing your number one ally and not having to vote them out or backstab them later on could be a good thing. You don't have any like hurt feelings or animosities, but you could be like Tevin said, Soda, I never voted for you. Here, Hunter could be like Tevin, I never voted for you. Even though he knew that Tevin was probably getting a majority of the votes here, you sort of save face and keep that alliance member, a little bit of jury management. And low key, Hunter maybe becomes more of a free agent now. Like he can go with a bunch of different people, and he has a lot of options apparently. But a lot of the people on this cast are a little whack.
yeah, I feel like the whole thing about like, oh, Hunter can be a free agent kind of assumes that people want to work with Hunter. And I feel like that's an assumption just because you don't necessarily want to keep around the person who's going to keep beating you in immunities. Like maybe Q would keep around Hunter as a meat shield, but even then, it seems like Q is annoyed by Hunter. So I'm not sure for who it would be a good idea to keep Hunter around if Hunter doesn't have any allies.
That's true. We get to tribal council. It's a big WTF moment. I'm like, are we living in the simulation? What is happening? Q says, vote me out. I made a mistake. And everyone else is like, WTF is happening? Did you know about this? No. Did you know? No. But I feel like from his point of view, he is not quitting. He thinks he made a mistake and he wants to fall on his sword.
He's so weird about that. Like, I still don't get it. Like, I don't get the point of it.
I'm just thinking they really put all of the wackadoodles on OG Purple. It's like, oh, we thought, Q, Tiffany, Kenzie, they were the logical ones. They were the like even keeled, emotional, like regular people. And then Q comes out and is like, I want to quit again.
Yeah, yeah. All the wackadoodles on the same one. It's fine.
Yeah, but I'm like, okay, imagine that this was like a 3D, 4D chess move, and he actually had like an idol, and this was his ploy to get votes. In Australian Survivor this past season, there was an advantage. Like, if you had all the votes on you unanimously, then your vote would like vote the other person out. So the person was faking wanting to quit and then got everyone to vote for them. So, same thing here. If that kind of advantage came up, like you were never voting someone out if they ask to quit ever, just in case one of these random advantages come up. Imagine if he was actually 4D chessing here and had an idol and was like trying to play the idol in some kind of big move.
That would be so complicated. Jeez Louise. It makes my head kind of hurt thinking about it. So I'm glad that it wasn't some 4D chess move.
Yeah, I agree with Charlie though, and I think we've said it on this podcast. Like, if you want to quit, just quit at camp. Don't ask to be voted out at tribal council because it's not like, oh, you're saving all the rest of the people sitting there. Like, you are effing over everyone else's plans. Like, you are a number for some group. Like, I don't think they should give you the luxury of voting you out. If you want to quit, do it on your own time, not effing everyone else over.
Yeah, it's hard though because if you quit and then they also vote someone else out, that messes up survivors like pacing. But again, that's why I feel like they shouldn't do so many like double tribals like right after the merge because it's like you can just let let people have more wiggle room and then mm, mm. So I feel like one of the things that really comes up a lot is pacing.
Yeah. So with this vote, Liz does show that she is loyal. She stuck to her Tevin plan. She wasn't really willing to change her vote. I think that's a good thing for Liz. It's going to be whack next week because there's so much happening. Like the Yanu 3 is probably breaking up. Q is probably going to have no friends out there. Like he's shown to be like a little bit doing his own thing and will say whatever at tribal council that might not be in your best interest. You might be very wary of working with him, whether in the six or not in the six. Like everyone's just going to be really pissed off.
Yeah. Q kind of exploded his own game, which is impressive because he didn't even have to. So, good for him.
Yeah, maybe this will make people not want to target Q anymore. So maybe it was 4D chess because we've heard like Charlie say, oh yeah, Q's so social, he's running things, we need to vote him out. Maybe that turns people's minds around and they're like, actually, Q is a little bit off the deep end now. We can keep him around.
Yeah, there's like a sweet spot where Liz said something about Venus. I think it was Liz who said it. Like, I'd rather have a nuisance than a threat. And I feel like Q could fall in that same bucket where, like, he might be a nuisance, but is he really going to win? Probably not. So, yeah.
Until Q says it was all a test. I was testing you all to see if you all were dumb enough to vote me out.
And you were.
Bad move. So I'm excited for next week. It should be literally the Hot Mess Express. I'm excited to see the drama and the fallout of this episode. Maybe we'll see some people yelling at each other because I want to see a good fight.
I love some good yelling, but I'm not really sure who would yell at who. So maybe Venus will try to take credit for this again.
Venus will ask who's voting for her. People will be like, Q, why did you share I had the idol? Da da da. And then everyone will yell.
Yay! Yeah, I'm also really excited for the next episode. I hope that, some stuff happens.
Yeah, should be a good time next week. So, thank you all so much for watching. Definitely let us know in the comments what you thought of this episode. Did you think Q quitting is a good move for him, a bad move, or trying to quit here? Do you think targeting Tevin is the right move and for who? Or should they have targeted Tiffany here? And would you buy a Q skirt? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, and we will see you all